Welcome back, guys. So now we are going to continue into game 62. This is the game 62 of the TCEC Super Final match that recently concluded about 2 weeks ago. And this was a game between Stockfish playing as white against LeelaZero as black. And it was the same opening as the one in another video. They played this Benoni sort of position, this structure here, which was actually stipulated that they played like this. Alright. So from the previous video, we know that white should be attacking on the king side, or that's one of the ideas. So let's see what he does here. Knight f3, g6, bishop e2, h5, queen d3, bishop b6, h3, and now bishop d2 was played here. So white developed all his pieces, more or less, more or less. He kept his king in the center for as long as possible. He wanted to see whether the castle queen side, the castle king side, to leave the king in the center, or maybe to do something else, which we will see in the game. So here, black played knight f8. Alright. And this position, castling is bad because, well, you just lose a pawn. Right, you just lose this pawn here. So in this position, white went king f1 to play king g2. Right, to play king g2. Sorry, it's raining here. Alright. Yep, so here king knight fg was played. I don't know. I mean, both computers just play knight g8. It looks really weird to me. Right, bishop h6. Okay, in this position, I really like the way that Stockfish played here. So just now I mentioned that in the first game where LeelaZero was playing white, he attacked the king side. But given the fact that you have more space and also more active pieces or more developed pieces, I mean, just look at these guys here, right? All these guys here, they're all in the back rank, including the queen, right? It makes sense that you can also attack in the other side, on the queen side. So in this position, white played a very tricky move. He went rook b1. What's the idea of rook b1? The idea is that he wants to break open the queen side with b4. Now, why the queen side? So let me show you a few more moves and then I'll explain why, right? So let's say he takes, queen takes, knight f6. Alright, if you look at this position, the knight and the rook here, this knight and this rook here, in red, okay, in green and red, okay, in red now, they are very far away from this side of the position. Alright, and they're also not very active. It's not easy to get them into the game. So white wants to try to break open this side and try to fight here, while he is able to bring his pieces there much more quickly. That's the idea. So this is something like called the principle of two weaknesses, which you will see in this game. So first he wants to break open the position. So now a3, knight here, queen h6 to stop castling. Rook g8 was played, queen e3, king here, check, queen e3, king g8. So this was the line, and now b4. And now, if you look at this position, I would say that the worst pieces for black are these two guys here. Right, the same knight and the same rook. I mean, look at this knight. He only has two possible squares. And in fact, this square on g5 he will just die, and f8 doesn't look very enticing as well. But I would say the rook is a lot worse because this rook can't even move. I mean, think about that. A rook is so powerful, but it can't even move. And this indicates to white that it's a good time to break on this side, far away from this rook and this knight. He wants to attack on this side. So knight d7 was played, knight h4, b4, takes, rook b3. Why rook b3? The idea is to play rook to b1 and pressure that pawn, which is exactly what he did. Okay, so he went king here first, because if you go rook b1 now, you need to deal with knight to g5, and this pawn is in trouble. Right, so you can't just think about your own ideas, you must also think about your opponent's ideas. I have a video series on Karpov games, and one of the positions, one of those videos is about prophylaxis. So here you went king h2. After that g5, the idea is to play bishop f1. Right, this bishop is going to be useful on g2, where it can defend the king, it can defend the pawn, and also it shores up the light squares in the white king position. King knight goes back, bishop g2, knight f6. See, these knights and these rooks, they're just so not able to do much in the game. This knight is probably a little bit better because it's in a square where it controls the center, but still it's not very appealing. So rook b1 now attacking the pawn, rook a6. And now we see a long maneuvering game. So then f5 takes, h4, g4. Here bishop e4, rook g8. And now black's idea is to try maybe knight d7, queen c7, and try to bring the rook into the queen side. Alright, but the problem is that also here, black's king side, yeah, it looks quite solid right now. It's quite blocked. But one day white might want to play f4 to try to break open that side of the position. And it's also easier for him to switch his pieces from the queen side to the king side because he has more space. Right, so this is what we call the principle of two weaknesses. You attack one side, then you shift to the other side. Then you shift back, shift forward, shift back, shift forward. It's like a pendulum. Right? You try and push your opponent's pieces to the breaking point. So in this position, you have bishop c2. Okay. Now, I'm not going to explain the moves now. I mean, the next few moves. I don't really understand all of them, so it's not really easy for me to also remember them. But if I'm looking at a position like this, what I would want to do is to put my bishop on c6 or b5. I think this is a very good square for your bishop, because it controls the a8 square, it controls the e8 square, it's also in your opponent's house. It's also pretty active there. Right, so that's what I want to do. So for the next 10 or so moves, white has been trying to get his bishop to a4 and to c6. And black sort of makes it really hard to do that, right? But eventually, because of white's better space, his better active pieces, and look at these black pieces that are so passive, white actually manages to do it in time. So he went knight d7, king h6, rook b1. So we see a lot of shuffling around. King g2, queen d1, rook b1, and here rook c3, rook e3, knight c3. Finally, after all the time, it's ready to come to a4. If you play rook here, this is a mistake because bishop a4, and let's say you defend your knight, then queen c1 traps the rook. The rook is just trapped in the white house. Yeah, because there's so many pieces surrounding the black rook, and also white is just more active. So he couldn't take. He played knight f6, bishop a4, queen b3, and here you want to play bishop c6, but you lose this pawn. Perhaps it's also okay because you win this pawn, but Stockfish didn't even want to give black the chance, so he went rook a1 here. Now bishop b5, bishop here. I like this subtlety. I like this subtle move because both are fine. The idea of bishop c6 is that later on when you put your rook on, let's say b1, you want to attack this pawn. But right now it's already well defended by these pieces. So he played bishop b5 first to make the rook move away, and then now only bishop c6. So the pawn is defended less. And maybe you can play rook b1 with a tempo later on. So this is one of the subtleties of this move. Rook c8 was played, rook b1, rook a6, a4, rook d8, and now queen d1. It is ready. You have improved your bishop here. Now it's time to try and break with f4. Alright? He tries to find the right moment to do so. So queen c7, queen e1, and now rook b8. The idea of this is to eye this pawn and also to support the rook's invasion to the 7th rank. So here, finally, when the rook actually reached here, right, this black rook finally left the king side to come and join the defense on the queen side, he gets crushed on the king side with f4. Of course, taking is a disaster because you just go rook e7 and then you win this pawn on f7, and your pieces just flood into the house, into the black house. So here he took with the g pawn, and now queen takes check, king g7 is the forced move. And here I think rook e2 is a normal move. I would have played this on rook f3. But here Stockfish says, screw it, let's go and kill the black king. So takes, he sacrificed the material, he doesn't even care. And here you can take with the knight, but the problem is that there is check that wins the knight back. And here you are actually out of material. So the only move here is king h8, this is the best move. And now he went knight e4, improving the knight on the center square. Rook g8 check, king h2, And now he went b5, trying to gain counterplay. So of course I take the bishop, trying to keep the a file closed. I don't want to allow your rook to come to this square. Queen a5, queen h6. Of course you can take, but I think he just wanted to keep the queen side locked. Because your bishop does a good job, sorry, he didn't play that obviously. Because your bishop does a good job of defending these 2 pawns. I don't know why my computer is a bit slow today. Yeah, it does a good job of defending these 2 pawns. So here he went e2, now queen e3, just trying to wrap out this pawn. Takes the pawn, queen d1, h4, queen f3, and now king h3, and now queen here. Rook, queen a5, queen h6, rook f1, queen a7. Right, he just improves the position, and now finally he went knight g5. Right, white just improved the position to the maximum, and then he goes for the killer idea. Knight to g5. Trending mate, so the only move is rook takes, pawn takes, rook g8 to stop queen g7, and now g6 on split. Takes, and here he took with the rook, and I would resign here, but LeelaZero played queen g8 and then resign. All right, with an extra rook and extra pawn, it's an easy win. In one way that wins is maybe you can just take and then play, I don't know, let's say f7, king f8, and then just push your pawn, check. Doesn't really matter if he checks, right? You just play this, he takes, and then you play a6 here. Let's say king e7 to unpin, and here you can push and queen, but I mean you can even just give your rook, right? Give your rook, and then play a7 and make a new queen. So this was a beautiful game by Stockfish. He knew when to break, which side to break. He broke on b4 first to open up the queen side when the rook was on g7 and knight was on h7. These 2 pieces were very bad. He broke on b4, and after black brought his rook, managed to bring the g7 rook to b8, he broke on f4 and killed the black on the king side. So this is a good example of knowing what you want to do. Attack queen side, then break king side. Swing back and forth. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you do, please subscribe and like the video. And I'll see you in the next one.